Yes, and this is another combination of a couple of questions, but it's sort of the same issue, if you will. Can we get candidates' views on getting international students back to Massey in time for semester 1 next year? Whatever your view might be on that. But also related, a few questions we've had about seasonal workers. So if we can perhaps talk about getting people from overseas to the region for either of those two.
Anthony Williams.
That's certainly an interesting combination of questions, isn't it? The first thing is that, okay, it's totally reliant on getting overseas people back into New Zealand is totally reliant on the COVID-19 crisis and whether or not we can open up the borders effectively or manage that influx of personnel to actually be utilised. The second thing is that we have a bit of an unemployment crisis that's actually going on at the moment, and there's a percentage of people in and around the country that would be able to be retrained and moved into different areas of work, including, as we know, the seasonal work that's going to be coming up for the Hawke's Bay region, for example, as well as Marlborough, etc. These sorts of ideas and needs, requirements are something that we need to be all pushing together, and that's why you need us back in the engine room. Party Vote New Zealand First.
Tangi Utakere.
International education is a particular strength to this city, and I know that because it speaks volumes. Last year I led a delegation to our sister city, Guiyang, in southwest China, with our tertiary institutes and our secondary schools, and so we would only do that because it is a particular strength. However, the borders will remain closed until it is safe for us to make movement in that space. Now, if that means that we can work with tertiary providers to ensure that there is some sort of smooth transition, that's certainly an option. But let's not make any mistake or any doubt about it. We will only do that where public health is not compromised, and it's a fine balance between the two. In terms of the seasonal workers opportunity, similar sort of line of thought there. Obviously, if we're looking at skill set based opportunity there, it needs to be looked at a group by group basis, but fundamentally the borders need to remain closed so that it's a public health matter and that we're all protected.
Jack Phillips.
Yeah, well, many of my friends are international students, so I would quite like to make some more. So what ACT would do is follow a model similar to Taiwan, which is still heavy restrictions, however, they take a more private sector approach. Things we can do quite easily is we can let the free market provide. If the government wants to send health officers out to, say, hotels, so David Seymour pitched an example for Queenstown and Palmy, maybe up, rurally. Bed and breakfasts, quarantine each group of international students together, monitor them the whole way, strict penalties for breaching quarantine, 14 days, it's pretty standard, happens in other countries. In China right now, there is the largest esports tournament ever happening, and they managed a similar process of 14-day quarantine. Individually, they're all in hotels, it's all monitored. We can do the same here. Thank you.
Sharon Lyon.
Safety for New Zealanders has to be number one, I totally agree. Our business, Haydn, we have 95% students coming from overseas. We've had to innovate. But I have a question. Our party has lots of questions. And one of them is, how come very early on in this COVID situation, language schools were told, don't even think about having students again for at least 2 years? I'm concerned that this government isn't looking wide enough at other possibilities, that basically it seems to be pushing towards some kind of vaccine scenario. I'm not happy about that.
Tiano Tuiona.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said, except for what Sharon just said. And just one thing on the free market, I think hyper-individuality is not what we should be doing. Just look at the States. That's what they did. They are not coping very well. So the response that we're doing at the moment is a strong response, and it should be the response that we should continue to do. A strong immigration response is a strong health response. The thing on the RSE workers as well, I think when we start to think about opening up the borders in the most safest way possible, let's orientate ourselves to the Pacific. Because one of the things with the Greens is we understand that the climate crisis is here and with us, and Pasifika people are on the front lines of climate change. So if we're going to open up our borders when it's safe, when it's well to do so, we should orientate ourselves to the Pacific and not to other places, because New Zealand, Aotearoa, is in the Pacific.
David Popplewell.
Education is extremely important to the Manawatu, we know that. We've got to come to a plan, and this is what I'm waiting on the government to come forth, with a plan that gets tertiary students, the income earning students or the income giving students back into the Manawatu, provided it's done in the safest possible way. And the quarantines could be done exactly the same way as we're doing it around the rest of the country, but it must be safe for everybody included. As far as the Hawke's Bay, for example, I understand there are about 5,000 people short for picking the grapes and the apples this coming season. The new Conservative policy is that if you're on an unemployment benefit, you will not be in bed at 11 o'clock in the morning. You'll be out working or doing training. We have enough people in this country, I am sure, to supply that need. If we need to bring some in, we can bring some in. But certainly, as far as Hawke's Bay is concerned, I think we can sort out that 5,000 short problem fairly quickly.
And William Wood.
Well, look, I can't blame the current coalition government for not being confident in their border to bring people back in. We had hundreds of people, border workers not being tested. We had hundreds of people coming out of facilities not being tested. We had people mixing. We had day 3 tests not taking place. So the first thing we have to do is secure our border and make sure that it is safe to bring people back in. The number one thing National will do is establish a new border protection agency. When we have 10 groups wrestling for control of our border, that is a scenario rife for miscommunication, for problems and for struggles. So once we secure the border and ensure that it is safe, National is committed to bringing back international students so that we don't lose out to Australia, so that we don't lose out to the UK. But it has to be done, as has been said, with absolute concern for public health. We have students telling us we have the money, we will pay for the facilities, we will pay for the staff, we will pay for the testing, please let us come to your country. And when we have Massey University hemorrhaging money because they're not able to bring in university students, I think it's crucial we bring university students and seasonal workers back in.
Right of reply, Anthony Willems.
Just like to thank my esteemed colleague there, William Wood, for reminding me about the Border Protection Agency, which is actually a New Zealand First policy. The reality is that all of these situations are incredibly complex. We have to work together to think and work out the best way forward. Innovation is the key. New Zealanders, we remember number 8 wire, most of us do, especially the grey hairs here. Let's all get together and find a better way forward. Unfortunately, the borders aren't going to open anywhere soon, and we have to find a better way to use our tertiary education, and we need to work together domestically to make it work. Thank you.
Sharon Lyon.
I just want to make it really clear that I couldn't be happier if I could be proved wrong that this government doesn't have a corralling towards vaccinations for the population as the answer to this current situation. Why would I say that? Do you think I'm standing here just making it up? There was a video deep in the government website that actually had our leader, Jacinda Ardern, stating that. It was taken down because it had so many negative comments. Also last week, the same thing was said on national TV.
Sharon. Tony.
Well, if it's a 40-second opportunity for rebuttal, this shouldn't take too long. But what we've just heard from the previous speaker is a load of nonsense, quite frankly. And, you know, Sharon, if you're going to get up and say that my party's about questions, well, Labor actually has the answers. We've got a plan and we're waiting for your support. Party vote, Labor.